Hey, thanks for joining us. Welcome back to Grow with Farmers Cooperative. Today we're sitting here with a couple of young producers. We've got Sam Hahn and we've got Kyle Riesen. Kyle, let's start with you. Tell us, you're a farmer.
Yep.
Get specific.
Yeah. So I grew up on a farm, grew up on a dairy farm by Beatrice, and went to college for just a business degree, and but always loved agriculture. Grew up doing chores, stuff like that for my dad regularly. Worked the midnight shift a few times during the summer, which was always fun, milking cows. But just kind of was something I enjoyed. I always kind of knew in the back of my brain I wanted to do something in ag, whether it was production ag, working for the co-op, whatever that might be. I want to do something in ag. And while I was in college, I continued working for two farmers, and just kind of fostered that continued love to be in production ag. So I came back and had a job opportunity for myself to work for somebody else besides my dad, and then also they gave me opportunities to start something on my own. So
right now you're doing a little bit of your own and working with someone else?
Yep. Yeah. So I work for somebody else full time, but I also have a few hundred acres on my own that I get to make decisions on.
So is that K&R on your hat? Are you the K?
I am the K. Yes. It is.
Perfect. Sam, you work for the co-op. Tell us where you work at the co-op, and then you're also a producer on your own. So
yes. I work at Plymouth Agronomy for Farmers Cooperative, and over there I do various things in operations and sales, and with seed and chemical and fertilizer mostly. I also was born and raised on a farm in around DeWitt, Nebraska. My dad and grandpa and great grandpa, they all farmed, and so now I help dad farm, after work or on the weekend somewhat. And also for me, I have no crop ground or anything like that, but I'm a beef producer. I have cattle, and so that would fall under my producer belt, I guess. So that's what I do, and then, help farmers at work too.
Well, cool. So you got started because of family, and so did you. So you both it wasn't something that just jumped out of nowhere. Your family did it, and it just was that natural progression into it.
Yep.
Yes.
I get that right?
Yep, pretty much.
So you is it in the plan to take over the family side of it, or are you, because you have your own? How's that work?
Yeah,
Are we delving into gray area
Nolan, that's
here?
a to be determined. There's a lot of things that have to fall into place, but no. While our family doesn't have a whole lot of ground, my dad only has about 250 acres, and so eventually that would be the plan to try and buy that or take it over. I guess probably buy it. Because I have a brother too, so I suppose he should probably get some of that, I suppose. But maybe. But so that would be, eventually a goal to take over the family farm ground, because it's been in our families for over 100 years. So that's kind of exciting. But then keep my stuff alongside of that, and we'll see where the rest leads me, I guess. I haven't planned that far ahead.
So a big thing in farming right now is succession planning.
Mm-hmm.
That not enough people are doing it.
Yeah.
So is that a conversation that has been had?
Briefly. Yes, briefly, a little bit. This might be a talking point later on, but I was able to rent some ground from my grandma.
Okay. And
because it's in the family, they require you to do a succession planning workshop meeting thing. And whether I'm in the succession plan or not, they require that. And so my grandma and I had to go meet and discuss their succession plan. And so Grandma had that lined out, and then we got a check mark, and she was able to qualify for the beginning farmer benefits, I guess.
Oh, cool.
As me renting her ground. So it's been talked about, but no definite plans so far.
So how about you, Sam?
I wouldn't say there's nothing set in stone. There's nothing written down, but we kind of have an idea of how things will go when Dad wants to back off or give it up, and I can start farming, and we have that kind of worked out with my other siblings too, and my mom and all that, and what it'll look like with my family and what we do. So, like I said, nothing written down. And I know
conversation is
the conversation has been had. I don't know. We have to, at first, the one of the hardest part with succession planning is that, with these producers who are going to be giving it up, it's when are they going to give it up? And that's a difficult conversation to have, and because then different variables come up, like who's going to control what, and if it's a producer that's phasing out, well, not a lot of times they might not want to give up some control that they still have. Yeah. So there's a ton of different challenging variables that go into it, and you just have to figure out what's important for each of you. And
what's going to work the best.
What's going to work the best, and some kind of things like the things I think of in succession planning. A lot of times it's difficult. You got to be able to find a place to meet some common ground and see eye to eye, and that's getting on that same page is a lot of times what the most difficult part is.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to skip ahead a little bit. Obviously, you guys are both young. Statistically, the average age, I believe, of our customers and our farmers is that 56, 57 range. If you don't mind me asking, how old are both of you?
I'm 26.
I'm 25.
Gosh. All right, I'm 28, everyone. Wow. I'm going to put that out there. So is that age, does it ever hinder you? Do you feel like it's a problem, or does it help you sometimes when you're trying to either get something done, get a deal made, talk to somebody? Does your age ever come into play? Kyle?
I would say probably the challenges I faced so far, just for the guys I work with, I come in and meet with the co-op, talk to Sam and some of his coworkers pretty often about fertility, especially fertility, and then a lot of spray chemicals that we buy through co-op. And I would say the biggest challenge, at least when I got started, was people were, I guess, recognizing who I work for because they've had that relationship built so long. So I was a new guy coming in, and it was a new face, which that wasn't
to build that relationship
again, and or a new relationship, working for the guys that have done business there for probably their whole lives, I would guess. Yeah. I don't know how long they've been there, but I think sometimes too then is if you're interested in crop ground, sometimes that's difficult to get in being a young producer, because a lot of times those guys that are 50, 60, and 70 probably have already thought if they have kids, how that's going to be passed down to either their kids, but if their kids don't farm, then they have to come up with another plan. And so sometimes that can be a delicate subject to deal with, because they want to pass it down to a kid, but how can you approach that guy and fit into that mix comfortably so that they're happy with their result and you're happy with your result?
Anybody.
Correct, and not stepping on toes. So I think it's just basic. I wouldn't say it has to deal with a whole bunch of age necessarily, but it's more of
being the new guy
on the block, being interested in that, and making sure you're taking your turn as well. So,
to piggyback off that, what I think maybe you're trying to say a little bit is establishment.
Yeah.
Like as a young producer, when you come in, whether it's trying to buy ground, rent ground, buy inputs, build relationship, you have to establish yourself in some way. And these guys who are 30 years older than us, that's 30 years more experience. So I think it's definitely you're at a disadvantage in that regard, especially like when you're talking about trying to raise a crop or produce a crop and take it to market. There's a lot of money that goes into that. These inputs, there's several thousands, $100,000s of dollars that go into, running a farm. And, when you're 26 years old, 25 years old, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money, when you're 56, 57. But, a lot of, these producers who are that old have money behind them because they've made this lifetime of work. And, I think that's the biggest disadvantage. And, is a lot of times when you're younger, you can be smaller and be looking to grow. And when you're older, you may have as much. So you have more ground or, more product. So there's definitely different bulk pricing with your seed and your chemical, your fertilizer, any of these other things, you're at a pricing disadvantage or you just don't know how things work as well. And, that's all part of growing. But there's also advantages of being young, I think, too. Obviously, you're aspiring for more, not to say, older people aren't as motivated, but, a younger man or woman can just do more. Your body's set up to run longer hours.
In your prime.
Yeah, you're in your prime. I don't think
You're not going to break as easily.
Yeah, you're not going to break as easily. You're going to put in longer hours, and everybody does that farming. But I think the motivation there, and the willpower is there a little bit more, just based off by age. And so I think those things, and you have to do that when you're young.
Yeah.
So. Like a lot of times I'll come home from work and do stuff on the farm, and my dad will be in the house before I am, just because that's just the way it is. There's a young man and an old man. Especially like with me with cattle. Cattle's a young man's game. I mean, you're not going to be in there, sorting and cutting cattle off, as much when you're older as you are when you're younger, or it's going to take more of a toll on you, just based on how the human body works.
Yep, absolutely.
And you could probably drink a lot more Red Bull and coffee.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can drink a lot more of a lot of things.
So, I have this article that's got some interesting numbers in it, but there was a census in 2017, and I just think it sounds there were over 321,000 young farmers, which in their terms was under the age of 35. So that count is up from the 2012. Mm-hmm. So it is growing. I was going to ask this a little later, but what do you like? We need that number to grow, obviously, because right now the ratio of retirement age to young farmers is not in a good place. What do you have any thoughts on why that is, or what can either we as the co-op do or farmers themselves do to help get the younger generation back to the farm, interested in the farm, so that we can make sure these farms stay running? And
I'd say probably one thing is as a producer, no matter what your age, making those connections with kids in high school, I think, is important, whether it's an FFA or not. Making those connections with high school kids and say, hey, if you're looking for a job, come work with us if you want to. Obviously, you don't force it on them, but making those connections with the high school kids, with the young kids that say, hey, this is what ag's about. It's fun. It's a fun thing to be a part of. It's a lot of work. It's rewarding. You're growing food for people, not just locally, but around the world. And I think communicating that positive message to kids as soon as you can starts to bring that interest back. And like for Sam and I are classmates from high school, and I don't know, of our friend group, there's like 8 or 10 of us within a year of each other that came back to farm with somebody part-time on the side, involved in ag in some way. And we've maintained that close relationship, which I think is super cool. That's pretty rare, it feels like, that to have that connection with so many young producers that we have close friendships with. So getting kids started at a young age, I think, seems to be pretty important with that.
Well, it sounds like, because if that was your friend, because that's a lot of people to come back all together. So it sounds like building that relationship, even so, the young people that are interested in farming, talking to other people their own age about farming maybe that's correlation or coincidence or whatever, but I mean, it can't hurt, right? Just showing people.
I don't think it hurts, but we all kind of grew up on farms though too to begin with, so a lot of them's coming back to family.
Yeah,
and so that's more coincidence, I would say. But I think the sooner you introduce ag, production ag, whatever it may be, whatever division of ag it is, the younger, that can't hurt getting kids to come back to farm. Even if it's as simple as, a CSA garden or a vegetable garden that people do to take food to the farmer's market in town. Yeah. Like, that's farming too. it's a different kind of farming than what we're used to as far as corn and soybeans and cattle. But that's still farming too, and so that takes a lot of work. And some kids are interested in that, and that's becoming more popular.
I'm from Beatrice, Nebraska, and they do every year. They've got that farmers market, and there's a lot of people there growing or selling locally grown stuff. And my wife actually buys a lot of our during that time of year our groceries from there. Yeah. And I personally miss it when they shut it down for the year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, without a doubt. I would say that I don't know what that number is going to do. It's good that it's up, but I don't know how high it's going to get because, me coming from a itty bitty small farm, similar to Kyle, these smaller farms are disappearing all the time too because we, with technology and the advancements they are and some of the bigger operations, they can get across acres so quickly now compared to what they used to do. And I think that there has to be something said there for the technology and the equipment advancements to why there's less farmers. Sometimes, there's less acres as well, but the acres aren't, down, as much. And I think that's something you have to look at too, is how many acres are being farmed because we're raising
each one.
Yeah, we're raising better crops all the time on less acres. So that's, that provides, the good still. And I think that's a point that needs to be addressed. But, with these small, I want, small farms to continue on. And, that's a tough one to crack when there's, all these other big farms going on. And what I think that is, especially with younger people coming back to farm, is you have to find, someone who's getting out of farming, or retiring, or somebody that owns land that wants to help a younger kid or rent to a younger kid instead of something going out to the highest bidder, because you're going to have to find someone who's financially stable, who owns ground, who wants to help a young kid out because, somebody might not always be able to help you out. They might need to put it out for the highest bid, and that's something we have to we try and figure out with others, and then like I said, just promote it. Get high school and kids involved, promote agriculture classes, promote FFA, expose these things to these kids, and try and like Kyle said, get kids working on the farm. I mean, it's a tough labor intensive blue collar field, and you'll probably never work as hard physically and even mentally with all the accounting and taxes and all that stuff going into it, but there's just no more rewarding business as far as I'm concerned. Knowing you grew this crop from a seed to its harvest, and knowing it's going to help feed the world in America and all those other things.
There is that really interesting instant gratification of at the beginning of the season you planted that seed. And you get to see the end result a lot quicker than maybe somebody would in a different field. And,
yeah, absolutely.
But also but also you don't get to see it because you take all these inputs and you borrow all this money for this crop. Yeah. Well, you don't get to see it for the whole growing season. When you start a job, you can see a paycheck in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You don't see your paycheck
till harvest
or after
and get all your.
So it's tough to stay the course, a little bit sometimes.
Looking for that end goal.
Yeah, looking for the end goal.
Because isn't it like you basically get your entire paycheck in 2 or 3 weeks instead of.
Yeah. Depending on how you market your, your like for me, I do because I sell my calves and there's my paycheck for my cattle for the year, and then
I got to pay a loan, so I got to sell my sell my crops pretty soon. So I just sold my beans yesterday, so I can pay my loans off. So
yeah, you got to pay your loans off and make.
And you probably got to be pretty good at budgeting, knowing that you're going to get all this money at once, and you've got to make it last.
Yeah, well, and I pay my loans off with it. So, yeah, it's all about paying off the money that somebody else owes.
You got to use a pencil though. You absolutely have to use a pencil to make sure you spend it right.
Yeah.
So one thing, just curious because I guess I don't know. At a bunch of our branches, every morning there's a crowd of farmers, working, retired or otherwise, that all get together to drink coffee. Are you guys in that group, or is there?
No.
Something else?
I got it right here.
We're on the they're on the early morning coffee. We're on the late night at the bar stool. Probably
Yeah.
more. I mean, not all the time, but
Not
know,
every night.
Yeah, not
let's
not
make that
every
clear,
night, but
everybody. That's not every night.
Yeah. We like I said, we mentioned earlier, we have a group of friends, a lot of us who have come back to farm, and we have group chats on Snapchat and group texts, and we're always communicating, just about random stuff we did. This Snapchat originated from a bachelor party we had. Well, now it's turned into, we just talk about farming and stuff a lot.
How you stay in touch.
We'll send each other Snapchats of what we're doing in the field or tractor, or I am at work sometimes, and we'll talk about things, what things are priced at or what we hear out there, and we'll do the same thing in the text, and then we'll go hang out with each other, and we'll farm all day, and then we'll go hang out at like a bar once or twice a week or something to talk more about farming. And I know like my wife and other guys who are married, wives or girlfriends are always like, you guys really gonna farm all the time and then go talk about farming? And we're kind of like, well, that's what we do. So
that's what we do.
We definitely have some things we communicate with each other about, and those are kind of the platforms that I thought of. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I mean that's the same thing, and we like enjoy going out to we group chat each other and say, hey, we're going to the Mexican restaurant. We call it P&P, play and pickerel, and so we go eat Mexican food and then go to the bar and hang out for a little bit and then talk about farming. But I think those are. For me, those are pretty fun connections to have. I mean, I was a little nervous when I moved home from college because I was gone for 4 years, and I came back, and all these guys are back farming too. And so that was pretty fun to come back to this group and have such a tight-knit, close group of friends that we love what we do, and we love production ag. So that's pretty special to be a part of.
So every guest that comes on, and it's every single one, nobody gets out of this. We want to do a little thing, hashtag farming fail. So you got to tell me and tell everybody something that either you did or happened to you that is embarrassing that we can all get a good laugh at, like on the farm, or even doesn't have something related to your life in agriculture that is funny. What you got, Kyle?
Wow, I don't know. Man,
my list goes on, so good for you if you can't find anything.
I probably have some good ones. I'd say the one that probably comes to mind the most was what happened within the last year. And it's not like I tipped a tractor over or anything, but it was during harvest, and we were getting ready for the morning, so it was cold morning. We borrowed my dad's tractor. The guys I work for, it was during their harvest. We borrowed my dad's tractor. It's the auger tractor. It was kind of cold. We tried to get it going, turned the key, it wouldn't start. And I was running around the tractor trying to do everything I could to get it going. It wouldn't start, it would tick, but it wouldn't start. And this was when we had the dairy, this was our feed wagon tractor. It was our manure hauling tractor. It was our everything tractor.
So it was a very important.
Well, yeah, it's got like 13,000 hours on, almost 14. So it's like done its time, it's rocking and rolling still. But I know you never have to push in the clutch on this tractor when you start it. I know that for a fact because I would chore with it when we had the dairy. And my boss, my current boss, the guys I work for, he's about 70 years old. He comes over and says, well, did you push in the clutch? I said, no, I don't need to push in the clutch to start this tractor. He goes, well, try it. Pushed in the clutch, sucker started right up, no problem at all. And I was so mad and so embarrassed because that's as easy as it was. But I know for a fact that tractor does not need to start with a clutch. And for some reason that day it did.
And now he's going to hold that over your head for...
He hasn't brought it up yet, but I bet he's waiting.
But it's in his back pocket, just waiting.
Probably, if he remembers it, yeah, probably. But it was just kind of silly. I felt embarrassed about it.
Well,
it's not a great story, but it was.
Well, when he hears that, it's going to remind him.
Yeah.
And then he's going to bring it up.
I'll share the podcast with him.
Yeah. What you got?
Well, I guess my funniest one, for example, on the farm was during calving season last year, which is March for us. So as everybody knows, last fall, winter, spring was wet, miserable, sloppy. So I was going through the cow lot checking on calves. It's about 10 o'clock at night, and I'm by myself, and you get into the deep mud, and then all of a sudden you keep walking and your boots stay where it was, and you keep going, and then then everybody gets stuck, and then all of a sudden you're face down in a pile of manure. So
is that
actually wasn't there. That wasn't a one-time occurrence.
I think you Snapchatted.
I was going to say, there's got to be photographic evidence.
Yeah, I don't know if I didn't save it. I sent it to people though.
Yeah,
so,
you did.
And then another one. I'll be honest, that I can share a work fail. So I was merging onto a highway with the semi in a liquid trailer this year, and it was a divided highway, and I was pulling across the highway, and I had the close lane to me, so I went and took it, and then I lost the car that was in the far lane of my mirror, and I got a little panicky, and basically ended up running over a sign with the trailer on the highway. So I put a nice little dent in the trailer, and I had to call.
Employed.
I was just I'm still employed. Still got my job. I was filling in for a truck driver. He was hauling in hydro, so I was hauling in liquid, and it was his liquid trailer. So I had to call him and tell him to put a nice dent in his liquid trailer. So that wasn't a great phone call. But I did go back like 2 days later, or no, it was a day later, and the highway department already had the sign fixed. Yeah. So
we're good.
Taxes at work.
Yeah, that's your taxes at work. There you go. That's good. Yeah, those are both fun ones.
Yeah.
I probably don't have as many stories as everyone else, but so I've worked for the co-op since I think I started August, so not a long time.
Yep.
I have locked myself out of the building in DeWitt probably 3 times now, but I've gotten lucky every time that I've either had the garage door opener or the door didn't shut all the way. But this last time, I was able to go to the back of the building, and the loading docks.
Yeah.
I was able to climb up to that garage where they were loading fertilizer.
Yeah.
And I hung onto the door with like the tips of my fingers on the little windows and started banging on the door. But he was on the forklift, so I sat there for a good 5 minutes trying to get his attention. Before he finally came over and let me in.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have my keys, my phone,
garage door,
anything.
Opener.
Yeah. No. And probably won't be the last time.
There you go.
Well, that place is like Fort Knox over there. It's always locked.
Yeah, you can't get in.
I try and haul seed boxes over there, and I'm like, I can't get in the building unless
somebody's there. Yeah.
Yeah, and somebody's there. It's always locked up tight, and I'm like, well, I hope somebody's here.
So far, I've always made it back in, but
That's good.
It was cold, and it was not.
I've had to make phone calls before, be like, hey, I need someone to let me in. Because I don't have a key to the place because, that's not where I'm based out of. But when I go over there, I'm like, I need in here.
Yeah.
All right, so the last thing we want to talk about, obviously there's a lot of financial hurdles if you were today to say, I'm going to start a farm. I'm going to be a farmer. Do you think the finances are more of a reason people don't get into farming, or you think the interest, just the general knowledge and interest of farming, like, would you say it's both problems equally? Like, how do you think that split is based on, your experience?
I don't know if I'd be tough to put an exact split on it, but it's definitely both. Like, my wife, she's not from a farm, and I start talking some of the numbers it takes to run the farm, and her jaw just drops, and she's like, what? And
I think there's a lot of people that don't understand.
Yeah, they don't understand the several hundreds of thousands of dollars it takes to run a farm just year in and year out, let alone get started when you don't have much. I don't know how you'd get starting nowadays if you don't have someone like you're related to or you've worked for
that can help you out.
Yeah. You have to have help. There's no way you could do it by yourself. And, I think that the combination of the intensive labor and the long hours and the financial strain is the big things it takes, that makes people shy away from it. And even some people who grew up on a farm, when they see their dad and their parents or whoever struggle for so long trying to make ends meet and trying to make things work, I think that, that can shy them away from it if they're not, very into, agriculture and being outdoors and producing a crop. So, I mean, because if you look at it like analytically and, financially, there's an old saying, there's the only way to become a millionaire farmer is starting out a billionaire. So that, that's just,
looks like I won't be a millionaire farmer.
Well, it's a tough business. And you got to be a marketer. You got to be a producer. You got to know your taxes. You got to figure out your inputs. And there's just so many things.
You got to be really into it.
Yeah. There's so many things that fall under the hat or the umbrella of a farming operation that probably a lot of people don't realize. And, you got to be a mechanic too with trying to fix stuff. And, I think the constant challenges, because I even question it sometimes. I get off work and I go farm and, like for me during calving season, I have a calf that dies or I have a cow that's open and I, these things that happen. I'm like, why am I doing this? Sometimes, it's like, why don't I just go to my job, work and then come home and not try and float this other stuff too. And, it's challenging. You gotta remember why you're doing it. So,
Why
it's
are
a lot
you
of
doing
things.
What is that reason?
Do you remember?
Well, sometimes it's tough. And, for me, it some people will say this is corny, but, like when your great-grandpa did it and your grandpa did it and your dad does it,
Tradition means a lot.
Tradition means a lot. And like, the land that's been in your family for over 100 years and making a living off that land or at least supporting your living in some way off that land and seeing the fruits of your labor and the challenges and getting the rewarding benefits of those things and, just the good, honest, hard day's work and the reward of that. And I just think is second to none. And, I go back to that old farmer saying, that Paul Harvey had, and it's like, I want to spend my life doing what my dad did. And, just kind of that, in that simplistic way of life of it, it's just things that I love about it.
Yep.
And, whether that's right, wrong, or indifferent, I have a job. I work my job and I still do my farming and I love them both. It's just, it just can be challenging.
Yeah. Oh, I'd piggyback on what Sam said. I mean, I think as a young producer, I think there's two important things, obviously. One would be for old farmers, I think every young guy has to have an opportunity because of the financial demands of the job and of the profession. So I think when guys start to say, well, hey, maybe in 5 years I'm going to hang it up, I think it's important for older producers to consider trying to find a young producer that wants to get started in the community, or if it's just somebody that, however that would look, I don't know. But I think it's important because a lot of times, in my experience, which isn't very big, it seems like even those guys had an opportunity. Maybe the ground got handed down to them, so maybe it's debt free, or maybe a neighbor gave them an opportunity to get started and work with them. And so I think, and maybe you can say, well, this guy just worked his tail off and he made it, which there are those guys too, absolutely. But I think a lot of the older farmers even would admit that they even have an opportunity to get started. So when you have a young producer that's in the area, I think it's important for an older producer to remember, hey, let's try and give this guy an opportunity, even if it doesn't mean top dollar. Now, sometimes guys need it, like you said, because of financial situations, and maybe somebody in your family's sick, so you need top dollar stuff out of your ground, and that's, some of that stuff's understandable, but
just giving somebody
an opportunity is really important, because you want to pass farming down to the next guy. And then the other thing for young producers too is there's a fair amount of tax credits out there, and that's been an opportunity for me. While you don't necessarily see the benefit of it, you see it a little bit in your financials where, say, this is nothing related to my operation, but say cash rent's going for $200, and well, to me that's a lot of money. And so, especially if you're getting started, that's a lot of money to spend $200 for cash rent an acre. Well, if you get a tax credit to that landowner, say, basically a cash rent tax credit through the state of Nebraska is like 10% so you can pay 90% of that you can pay $180 an acre for that cash rent, and then that landowner can get that extra 10% back as a tax credit. So yeah, you're not paying them $200 right up front, but you're paying them 180 or 190, whatever that amount was.
180, yeah.
180, and so then they're still getting that $200 an acre. It's just coming back in a tax credit. Well, I know $20 an acre, yeah, it doesn't seem like a lot, but when you start to talk about acres, yeah, I mean that really helps. And so there's opportunities like that. I know there's one for a share rent, and so different opportunities, if you can find as many tax credits as you can.
How did you learn, or where did you so if somebody listening right now wanted to find it,
yeah,
where would you point them?
type in Nebraska Department of Ag tax credit, beginning farmer tax credit.
Yeah.
And that's where it starts.
And that's where they can find.
It'll take you to the page.
Yeah,
if you
Google has
it.
anything. Just keep searching through the pages, you'll find it.
I can't remember. I don't have the exact web
it's,
address, but I know what you're talking
well,
about.
it'd be the other one would be like Next Gen. Nebraska Department of Ag Next Gen tax credit or something like that, and that'll go through it. You have to do some paperwork. There's some paperwork involved for both you and the landowner. But then there's other ones too, like through FSA. You can get a beginning farmer operating loans that are, I think, they're reduced interest rates.
Yeah, they're
just
that's
lower
what I
interest
operate
rates.
on. Yeah, they're lower interest.
And so
yeah.
that gets you going too for a while. And now I think there could be more opportunities for people that provide the inputs. I don't know that because I'm not on that side of the business. Sam could attest to some of those things, but I don't know if there's opportunities to say, well, hey, maybe if you farm for the first 5 years you farm, maybe you can get a little better discount on products like that would compete with a bigger farmer. Not necessarily like half price inputs, but like to bring some of those inputs down. I don't know if those are opportunities out there. But I think to start with tax credits and at lower interest rates that the government and financial institutions offer, I think those are most important to look into, whether you're crop production or livestock production.
Yep.
But the task is still daunting. But that takes the sting off of it a little bit.
Well, hopefully that information can help somebody. But I think we're out of time. I would like to thank both of you for coming out. This, if you want to listen to yourself talk, this will be basically everywhere on the internet. So,
Wait.
And it's forever.
Wait.
So,
Forever and ever.
It's
Amen.
forever and ever. And listeners, thanks again for tuning in. Check out the next one and have a good one.
We'll see you.
See you guys. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nolan.
Thank you.